Welcome to the press conference held by the State Council Information Office. Today, the Public Security Ministry, the National Health Commission, and the National Medical Products Administration jointly made the announcement of adding fentanyl-related substances to the supplementary list of controlled narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances of non-medical use. This marks a step by the Chinese government to officially schedule the whole class of such substances. Today we have with us the deputy head of the National Narcotics Control Commission and Ministry of Public Security, Mr. Liu Yuejin, Mr. Wang Hesheng from the National Health Commission, and also Mr. Chen Shifei from the National Medical Products Administration. They will give you a briefing and take your questions. Today we have some foreign officials at this press briefing. A big welcome to you all. Now, first, the floor goes to Mr. Liu. Please. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the press, good morning. Now, on behalf of the China National Narcotics Control Commission, let me make the announcement of adding fentanyl-related substances to the supplementary list of controlled narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances with non-medical use issued by the Ministry of Public Security, the National Health Commission, and the National Medical Products Administration. According to the relevant provisions of regulations on the administration of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances and regulations on the administration of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances with non-medical use, the Ministry of Public Security, the National Health Commission, and the National Medical Products Administration decide to add fentanyl-related substances to the supplementary list of controlled narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances with non-medical use. 和国家药品监督管理局决定，将芬太尼类物质列入非药用类麻醉药品 And we have decided to add fentanyl-related substances to the supplementary list. 芬太尼类物质是指化学结构 Fentanyl-related substances are defined as substances structurally related to fentanyl by one or more of the following modifications. A. Replacement of the N-propionyl group by another SI group. B. Replacement of the N-phenyl group with any aromatic monocycle, whether or not further substituted in or on the aromatic monocycle. C. Substitution in or on the piperidine ring with alkyl, alkoxyl, ester, ethyl, hydroxyl, haloalkyl, amino or nitro groups. D. Replacement of the phenethyl group with another group. Exclude hydrogen atom. Adjustment could be made in accordance with Section 2 of Article 3 of the Regulations on the Administration of Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances with non-medical use under the condition that the scheduled substances aforementioned be identified to have medical, industrial, scientific, research or other legitimate use. Fentanyl and its analogues, which had been scheduled previously in the list of controlled narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances and the supplementary list of controlled narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances with non-medical use remain under control in accordance with the original lists. This announcement shall be effective as of May 1st, 2019. Ministry of Public Security of the People's Republic of China, the National Health Commission of the PRC, and the National Medical Products Administration of the PRC.
刚才我向大家宣读了
Just now, I made this announcement of adding the fentanyl-related substances to the supplementary list. It marks the decision by the Chinese government to schedule such substances by class. That is an important legal and innovative step taken by the Chinese government. Illicit drug is a common menace to mankind and puts the future of the entire humanity at stake. China has long been a victim of narcotic drugs. Over the past 70 years, since the founding of the new China, the party and the government have been committed to drug control and a stringent anti-narcotics policy which consists of the principles of prevention first, comprehensive measures, and prohibitions on illicit drug cultivation, manufacturing, trafficking, and abuse. Since the 18th Party Congress, General Secretary Xi has made important instructions on drug control, emphasizing the need to harness our political and institutional advantages to streamline the management system of drug control, enhance accountability, and rally the people around the cause of drug control with Chinese characteristics, and resolutely win the people's war on drugs in the new era. The Office of the National Narcotics Control Commission and relevant regions and authorities have firmly implemented the decisions and the instructions of the central authorities working proactively to overcome difficulties. As a result, China has seen steady and continued improvements in drug control. That said, profound and complex changes are taking place around the world. In particular, new drugs such as fentanyl-related substances have been widely abused in some countries, leading to lots of deaths caused by overdose and grave social problems. Facing such global challenge, the Chinese government has decided to schedule fentanyl-related substances by class, which is not only an important step to prevent and address the danger of new drugs and protect the health of the people, but also a significant contribution by China to the global efforts against narcotics and to world security and stability. Scheduling fentanyl-related substances by class is an innovative step by China to counter the drug problem, which creates opportunities to deepen reform and development in our efforts on drug control. The Ministry of Public Security, the National Health Commission, and the National Medical Products Administration have carried out relevant studies, risk assessment, expert evaluation, and collection of suggestions with close coordination, thus managing to complete the legal procedure to schedule such substances within 4 months. In particular, the legal definition of fentanyl-related substances has been scientifically determined based on thorough arguments which guarantees extensive and expandable scope of scheduling and ensures minimum impact on medical, industrial, scientific research and other legitimate uses. After the announcement is released and implemented, competent authorities in China will work promptly on relevant legal instruments, including the guidance on the application of laws in criminal cases of fentanyl-related substances and the guideline on case filing and prosecution in criminal cases of fentanyl-related substances. Follow-up efforts, including the establishment of drug forensic labs, the development of universal on-site fast testing instruments and protective gears, the formulation of standards of drug testing methods in public security sector, and the establishment of a monitoring system based on suspicious samples and spectrum. All these follow-up measures will be advanced to fully improve the monitoring, early warning, on-site inspections, examination, profiling, and risk assessment on fentanyl-related substances and other new drugs. This could provide quality and efficient technical support to routine supervision and law enforcement and ensure the efficacy of class scheduling in law enforcement and judicial practices. Cooperation leads to synergy, and win-win outcomes require joint efforts. The Chinese government is ready to work with the international community to share experience in drug control, offer our solutions to the global fight against drugs, and contribute to building a community with a shared future for mankind and promoting peace and development of humanity. Now, my colleagues and I would love to take your questions. Thank you, Mr. Liu. Now the floor is open for questions. Please identify yourselves before making your questions. Thank you. With CCTV. Well, we know that China has adopted very strict regulatory measures on fentanyl. The extent of controlled substances have exceeded that of the UN. Then why do we still try to schedule such substances by class? Well, it was only until recent years that fentanyl-related substances appeared and began to spread widely in the US and Canada and other countries. Because such substances are highly toxic, they come in many varieties, they are mutating very rapidly and are difficult to hunt down, so they have become a major global challenge. In response to such challenge, Chinese authorities have taken comprehensive measures to control such substances, strengthen daily regulation and supervision, step up law enforcement, and come up with innovative management methods, and strengthen international cooperation. Now, 25 substances have been scheduled, more than 21 under the UN, thus effectively preventing the spread of such substances in China. In particular, we have strengthened the supervision and monitoring of the legal producers of fentanyl-related drugs, which will ensure extremely stringent standards from production to usage and adopt a closed-circuit management model, thus thoroughly preventing the illegal flow of such drugs produced legally by enterprises. As we all know, China has long been a victim of drugs. We have suffered a great deal due to drugs. And in the 3 years following the founding of the new China, our party and the nation eradicated drugs, making China a drug-free country in the world. However, with the continued spread of drugs worldwide, this issue has once again reared its ugly head in China. Since the party's 18th Congress, General Secretary Xi is highly committed to drug control and has made important instructions requiring us to actively participate in global drug control as we build a community with a shared future for mankind for the sake of the health, security, and well-being of mankind. Last December, General Secretary Xi made the solemn announcement that China will schedule fentanyl-related substances by class, which is part of the efforts by our party and the government to consistently follow a policy of countering narcotics. We also showcase our readiness to participate in the global drug control and our mission as a major country to address the global challenge of narcotics. It is also a sign of the strong resolve of the Chinese government to put people first and ensure people's health and well-being. Having seen what happened in the US, we will take these precautionary measures to earnestly ensure the mental and physical health of our people and their immediate interests. We are convinced that the efforts to schedule the whole class of fentanyl-related substances will stop criminals from acting with impunity by producing new substances, by making simple modifications regarding one or several atoms, functional groups, or groups. It would also lay a solid legal foundation for public security, customs authorities, the prosecutors, and the law enforcement in effectively combating such criminal activities. It could help prevent the spread and abuse of such substances and the illegal manufacturing, smuggling of such substances, thus contributing China's solution to the global fight against drugs. Thank you. Next question.
From Phoenix TV, know that U.S. keeps accusing China as the main source of fentanyl-related substances. What's China's take on U.S. accusations? And will China's class scheduling address U.S. concerns? Thanks. China is strict on the control of fentanyl-related substances. And such drugs produced by authorized pharmaceutical companies has never been leaked, and it's impossible for them to flow into the United States. From the several cases that the Chinese law enforcement cracked about illegal processing and trafficking of fentanyl-related substances to the United States were all collusion between criminals in China and abroad. The drugs were in disguise or concealed in international parcels at a very limited amount. They couldn't be the main sources of such drugs in the United States. Therefore, U.S. accusations lack evidence and are not in line with the facts. The Chinese government always takes a tough line against narcotics. As a responsible major country, China fulfills its international obligations on counter-narcotics in earnest and proactively participate in global governance on drugs. The manufacturing, trafficking, and abusive use of fentanyl-related substances is a global problem that cannot be resolved by any country alone. Global efforts are needed. The Chinese government will work with the rest of the international community, including the United States, to jointly study and respond to the international problem, that is the psychotropic substances control, including fentanyl-related substances. We believe that United States' main own reasons are the main factors of the abusive use of fentanyl-related substances. The first factor is its own tradition. The U.S. has a tendency of opioid using. Accounting for only 5% of the world's population, the United States consumes the world's 80% of opioid drugs. Second factor is interests. Large pharmaceutical companies want to earn a sizable profit, so they sponsor experts to draw a biased conclusion that opioid drugs are harmless. Drugstores sell these drugs with a lot of efforts, and doctors prescribe such drugs in an abusive way, forming a complete chain of interests. Third factor is lax supervision. The supervision of prescription drugs are lax. Cross-state or repeat prescriptions are underregulated. There is a prominent hazard through the medical channels. The fourth factor is its culture. There is not enough public campaign on the danger of drugs. Some people link drug using with freedom, personality, and liberation. And now that more than half of American states have legalized cannabis, all these factors combined lead to the large-scale abuse of fentanyl-related substances in the United States. My opinion is that if the United States is serious about addressing the problem of fentanyl-related substances, more work needs to be done inside the United States. First of all, it needs to identify the reasons of large-scale abuse of these drugs inside the United States, about the group of people abusing this drug, the sources of these substances, and the channels of smuggling and trafficking, to identify the crux of the problems and take targeted measures before we see the real effects. Particularly, more efforts need to be made on drug prevention education by reducing the demand on drugs to curb the abusive consumption of fentanyl-related substances, while taking a tough line against drug-related crimes. The U.S. also needs to approach international cooperation in a more practical way, strengthen its intelligence and lead sharing and joint investigation, instead of purely accusing other countries. Thank you.
您好，我是美国 CNN。首先要向您确认一下，就是您刚才说的这个整列管制的这个芬坦尼类药物，因为我们都不是专家，那是这样的这个新的规定的这个出台，是不是能够
China is going to
漏洞呢？就是说，不管这个不法分子
schedule the whole class of fentanyl substances. Does this mean that the new measure will cover all the classes, or are there any substances that will not be covered by your announcement? You will know that President Trump follows this issue very closely. Last December, he once tweeted that if China can adopt death penalty on the suppliers of the fentanyl substances, that would really help. Some Americans are also concerned that no matter what policies the central government adopts, the implementation may be spotty at the local level. So will there be any measures against that? So Mr. Chen from the National Medical Products Administration.
除了严防滥用以外还要最大限度地减少对合法需求的影响。
In addition to preventing the abuse of the drugs, our efforts on drug control must also minimize the impact on legitimate uses of such drugs. So, when examining the possibility of scheduling the whole class of fentanyl-related substances, we have taken the following measures. First is to fully evaluate the specific substances and the potential legal use of such fentanyl-related substances so as to give more predictability. And second, we have made a scientific definition of such substances, the scope of which cannot be too extensive or too narrow. And third, we have also identified exceptions. And if the scheduled substances have legitimate uses in medicine, industrial, scientific research, or other fields, then we can make prompt adjustments regarding the substances being scheduled. But of course, with improvements in legislative, administrative, and regulatory means, we can also make relevant adjustments accordingly. The other question you asked is about the tweet by President Trump regarding China's law enforcement on scheduling fentanyl-related substances. Let me answer that briefly. When it comes to fighting drugs, the Chinese government has a firm and explicit position. We have very clear laws and regulations on that. When it comes to fentanyl-related substances and other new drugs, These drugs have not been spread very extensively and widely in China, but despite that, the Chinese government has taken this issue very seriously. We have decided to schedule 25 fentanyl-related substances and 2 precursors, exceeding the 21 categories under the UN rules. And when it comes to law enforcement, we have always acted in strict accordance with the law and ensured strict law enforcement. By scheduling the whole class of fentanyl-related substances, the Chinese government will be even more stringent and punish all those criminals involved in such substances. Next question.
谢谢中国新闻社的记者提问。我们想请问一下，就是整类列管芬太尼类物质，都涉及一些法规的调整。谢谢。
What laws are included in the adjustment on the class scheduling of fentanyl-related substances?
To ensure that such substances are fully scheduled, the adjustments would involve the following. First, we have introduced the concept of related substances. On the basis of thorough studies, experience sharing, expertise examination, and the collection of opinions, we have come to a scientific legal definition of fentanyl-related substances. We have ensured that this definition will cover all the substances to be scheduled, and at the same time minimize the impact on the legitimate uses in medicine, industrial, and scientific research, and other related fields. Second, we have put new substances under control. We have launched the legal procedure of scheduling such substances and have added fentanyl-related substances to the supplementary list of controlled narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances of non-medical use, thus putting fentanyl-related substances into the scope of banned drugs. Third, we have formulated supporting regulations. The Supreme People's Court, the Supreme People's Procuratorate, the Ministry of Public Security, and the relevant authorities are working on the guidance on the application of laws in criminal cases of fentanyl-related substances. The fentanyl-related substances dependency conversion table, the guidance on case filing and prosecution in criminal cases of fentanyl-related substances and other related documents and legal instruments. The introduction of related substances and the class scheduling of certain substances will not only improve the system of laws and regulations on drug control, it would also provide a strong legal basis for fighting and punishing all kinds of criminal activities involving new drugs. It is also a good supplement to the socialist law system with Chinese characteristics and will provide useful reference for our legislative and judicial practices in other areas. Next question.
Hi, with AFP. The U.S. has indicted several Chinese nationals, including Zhen Jiang of Xerin Biotech, Xiaobing Yan, aka Stephen Yan of 9W Technology, and several other individuals for selling fentanyl to the U.S., which has led to overdoses and deaths of several people. Have those individuals been arrested in China, and will they be extradited to the U.S.?
犯下了芬太尼类物质走私的罪行。
稍等，没关系，先翻译一下。
美国日前已经传唤了数名中国籍的人士，罪名是呢，他们与芬太尼类物质的走私有关。想问一下，中方对此有何看法？未来会采取什么样的措施？
好，
你刚才提到的这个那几个人涉及到的那几个案件。
The individuals and cases you just mentioned
和美国执法部门一直在联合侦办的几起案件，
actually
而且合作得非
indicted
常好。
through the cooperation between Chinese and American law enforcement teams. We have had very close and good cooperation on these cases.
中国还没有发现
But
这
so
几个
far,
人 有触犯中国法律
China has
的
not
情况，
found evidence of these
美方
individuals
也
breaking
没有
Chinese
提
law.
出，也提不出来这几个人触犯中国法律的
And
证
the
据。
US has not presented hard evidence
这个工
regarding
作呢，
these
双方
individuals
仍
breaking
然在
Chinese laws.
进一步的合作，进一步的侦查。
And our two sides are still
但是现在呢，
working
美国
and
方面
investigating together on these cases.
采取了一些诉讼的其他的一些措施，
But recently, the
在没有
US
跟中
has
国方面
taken some
提前沟通、
unilateral
提前打招呼的情
legal
况下
actions without
这样的做法呢，
informing the Chinese
也
side.
有损于双方合
And
作的
such
良好的
practice
氛
by
围。
the US would
对
be
此呢，
detrimental to
中
the
方表示遗憾。
friendly atmosphere of our bilateral cooperation,
对
and we find it
执法方面的
regrettable.
问题，
When it
中国
comes to
下一
law
步
enforcement,
仍然会继续的关注美
China will
方
continue
在侦办这些案件，包括诉讼方面的一些进展和动向。
to follow
中国
closely
也
the
会继
developments
续的
by
对
the
这些
US
人、
law
对
enforcement
这些案件
authorities,
继续深入的调查。
and we will continue to deepen our
另外，同时
investigation of these
下一步也
individuals
继
and
续
these
这个美
cases.
方执法部门进一步的
And
加
going
强联
forward,
系，
we will
加
continue
强
to
情
step
报
up
交流和信
contacts
息共享。
and information sharing with our US counterparts. Next
第二
question.
排这位女士，对，第二排这位女士。
谢谢发言人。中国日报记者提问：那我们将采取哪些措施呢？对芬太尼类
What
整类物
measures
质
will
列
be
管
taken
呢落到实处？
on
第
the
二呢是在
implementation
打
of the
击此
class
类犯罪
scheduling
呢
of
我们加
fentanyl-related
强国际合
substances?
作方面有何进一步的安排和打算？
What are the next arrangements for greater international cooperation in this regard?
在这个立法上，
After
我们实现对芬太尼类物
scheduling
质的整类
fentanyl-related
列管以
substances
后，
by class through
中国政
legislation,
府的相关的主管部门
relevant authorities in the
将
Chinese
采取一
government
系列
will
的措施，
take a host of
确
measures
保这项
to
规定
ensure
落到实处，
full and effective
取得实
implementation.
效。主要应该采取如下几个措施：
Measures will be
第一，
taken in the following
部
categories.
署排查厅，
First, we will run
深
thorough
入摸排
investigations.
重点地区
There will be
生物
in-depth
医药基地
investigations on biomedicine
和化
bases
工
and
园区
chemical parks in key areas.
查清排除非法制造芬太尼类
We
物
will
质的风险
eradicate
点，
the risks related to
清理
illicit
互联网
manufacturing
涉毒
of
信息
fentanyl-related substances.
切断不法分子
Drug-related
网上
information
联
on the
络
internet
交
will
易渠
be
道，
taken down, and we will cut off the online contacting and transaction
强
channels
化
of
查缉
criminals.
堵截，
Second, there will be
督促
an
物流基地
intensified
公司落
effort
实实
to
名基地
examine and intercept
开箱验视、过机安
drug
检、
smuggling and trafficking. We will urge express delivery
部
companies
署海关
to
重点关区
register the sender's real
加大
names,
对
to
高
conduct
风险
out-of-the-box
国际邮包
inspections and go
的
through
查
security
缉力度，
machines.
提高查验比例
Examination.
和频
More
次，
examination will be done
有
in
效拦截
clearance
芬太尼
zones
类
in
物
key
质
areas,
走私出境，
and the proportion and frequency of the
三
inspection will be
开展
increased.
立案调查，
Third,
系统梳理
we will
涉
conduct case
芬太尼
filing
类
and
物质违法
criminal
犯罪线
inspections
索，
against these cases
组织专门力
by
量
teasing out
破案攻坚，
all the criminal
经
leads
营侦获一
on
批非法制贩
fentanyl-related
和走
substances. We
私
will
芬太尼类
put
物质
together special
等
teams
新型毒品
to
案件，
crack cases on new type drugs
深化执法合作，
as related to their
主
illegal
动加
smuggling,
强与有关
manufacturing
国家
and
的情报
trafficking.
交流，
Fourth, we
和
will
个案
deepen
合作，
law enforcement cooperation.
联合
China
侦
will
控
take the initiative
走
to
私案件，
strengthen lead intelligence
追上家，
sharing
打
and
下
case-by-case
家，
cooperation with relevant
最大
countries
限度
to
的摧
jointly
毁
investigate
跨
the
国贩
smuggling
毒团
cases
伙网络，
to get to their
切断
the
走
upper
私
links
贩运
and
通
the
道，
lower links in the industrial chain and to take utmost effort to destroy the cross-national networks of drug smuggling. Fifth, we will step up research on technologies. We will take more efforts in the research of testing technologies and making standards. We will accelerate on-site investigation and the development of lab testing equipment and develop a rapid assessment system for the addiction and danger of fentanyl-related substances that in line with Chinese national conditions. Looking forward, China will work with the United States and the rest of the international community in a greater coordination and cooperation for joint response to the challenges posed by fentanyl-related substances. Thanks. Next question.
第一财经的记者，我有2个问题。第一个问题是在芬太尼整类列管之后，那么对于合法的像现在医药公司生产此类的相关的品种，是否会采取更严格的一些措施？监管措施，以避免一些合法的这类的产品进入到非法的领域。第二个问题是，最近有关于工业大麻的这样的一个事情，非常受到市场的关注。我们也关注到进度为此前好像有一些声明。那么想请问一下，就是目前很多。
We know that some companies have the production train involving the manufacturing and production of industrial use marijuana. Will there be tougher measures on that? In 1985, the Chinese government officially joined the UN Convention on Regulating Narcotics Drugs. In 1987, the Ministry of Health back then published relevant regulations which listed some fentanyl-related substances as narcotic drugs. The Chinese government is very strict about regulating such substances. When it comes to production, exports, and scientific research, we have very strict rules applying to these areas. When it comes to scientific research, we have set indicators and set specific companies for producing such substances. We have also strictly controlled the channels of the flow of such substances so as to prevent the illegal flow of such substances in medical institutions and other related areas. We also have very good measures in place to prevent the illegal flow of such substances. As for the exports of such substances, under the UN framework, we will have strict rules regarding the approval and export of such substances. But of course, the export volume is very small at this stage. But we have had very effective and sufficient measures on regulating such narcotic drugs. As for industrial use marijuana, let me respond briefly. The production, plantation, storage, and the transport of marijuana for industrial use is subject to strict management system and volume control. It is undertaken under the specific and strict legal regulation of the Chinese government. So far, we have not seen severe abuse of such drugs, such marijuana. At this stage, marijuana has been made illegal in many countries. Under such circumstances, the Chinese government have stepped up regulation of such marijuana and fixed all kinds of loopholes. So far, we have not found any incidents of illegal flow of such marijuana for industrial use. Next question.
Thank you from Financial Times. Commissioner Liu, you mentioned a lot of things about international cooperation. Apart from the United States, is there any country hopes to schedule these substances in their national lists? Would you share more information about your cooperation with other countries? About fentanyl-related substances, on sharing leads and joint operations, China mainly cooperates with the law enforcement of the United States by sharing information, intelligence, and run joint investigations. Our cooperation has been smooth and close. The Americans' counter-narcotics authorities is satisfied with their cooperation with their counterparts in China about other countries, in particular European countries. On cooperation in investigating and cracking down other psychotropic substances, they have some cooperation with China as well, and cooperation is going on in a sound way, mainly through sharing information, intelligence, and run joint investigations. I would say that China's cooperation with US, European, and other countries has been normal and sound. Thank you. Last question.
谢谢主持人。华尔街日报。我想请问一下，基于今天宣布的这个新闻，就是对中美贸易谈判和更广的中美关系有什么意义
affect China-US trade talks and the wider China-US relations? What will be its implications?
我们今天要回答的呢是芬太尼类物质。
The press briefing is mainly about scheduling of fentanyl-related substances by class.
世界性的一个禁毒的一个当前的一个大课题。
This is a major topic in the global fight against drugs. And of course, this problem is more serious in the United States. But today's press briefing is about how the international community can come together to fight the abuse of fentanyl-related substances. It has nothing to do with other issues.
That was a press conference held by the Chinese government. China has just announced the toughest measures on controlling fentanyl in the world. And to be specific, China has put fentanyl substances by class into its national narcotics and anesthetics control list. To be specific, 25 substances has been listed into the national control list, and the UN only listed 21. Now, for more insights into this crucial issue, we're joined in the studio by Mr. Harvey Zoding, a senior fellow with the Center of China and Globalization, a leading think tank in China. Well, Mr. Zoding, you're from the United States. So, as the official from China's Ministry of Public Security just mentioned, the United States has this serious problem regarding fentanyl. But now we'll be talking about that very soon. But let's get back to China's latest measure. It's indeed the toughest in the world. And as officials just mentioned, China still haven't seen a big problem of fentanyl abuse in the country. So do you see this as a precaution?
I see it partly as a precaution, but I see it more and China's role of going global, because what China does impacts the entire world. So I think China's taken a giant step today in impacting law enforcement and international cooperation in drugs. And I think it's important because what's been done today gives China many more tools in their toolkit to fight the scourge of drugs, especially drugs like fentanyl, which are designer drugs. You don't have to grow them in poppy fields. You can design these in a quite simple laboratory. And the problem before was that each time fentanyl molecules were tweaked, a new process of investigation had to be conducted. It was time-consuming, it was administrative, it was bureaucratic. Now with the action today, a lot more of these, what they call analogs, come under law enforcement. So China has taken a great leap forward in law enforcement in the illicit use of drugs around the world.
And that's not only about putting some chemical compounds into a list, it's a systematic work according to the information just released. For example, there will be tougher measures in monitoring, production, transportation and distribution, and also in legal terms, case filing, prosecution, even international judicial cooperation. What do you make of the future implementation to come?
Well, the trend in China is for more cooperation on an international basis because China believes that international cooperation is win-win. Unfortunately, in my country, the United States, the president believes more in bilateralism and less in internationalism. So a lot of the efforts that have been made in the last few decades under the UN Office for Drugs and Crime, the International Narcotics Control Board that I used to work for, and so on, in America are being diminished. In China, they're being increased. So I believe that it's very important. And I believe also that the measures that were specifically talked about today, like the increased enforcement, the higher technology, the registration of the drugs along the chain, supply chain and delivery chain, and so on, are critically important. And another thing that's happening is that China is devoting more resources to inspectors and inspections. China's a huge country, and as was pointed out, not all these fentanyl and fentanyl analogs are made by legitimate companies. Some are made in illicit laboratories. So all these steps will help reduce the illicit supply, while at the same time letting fentanyl be used for legal purposes. Fentanyl is a wonder drug. It is a drug
highly toxic too.
Highly toxic. So a few grams can help you relieve pain, but a few more grams can help relieve you of your life if you're not careful. So when this drug gets on the street of America or Canada or other countries where it's being abused, the people who sell it don't know where the lethal limit is, because this white powder looks like other white powder with which it's mixed and abused oftentimes. So the problem is that it can be highly lethal, and that's why so many people are dying around the world.
So you just mentioned a very worrisome global trend on fentanyl abuse. That's why China, in that press conference, China has emphasized that the effort is not static. It will develop according to the new trend all around the world. How will this help more on the international cooperation you just mentioned?
Well, I think what was announced today is kind of servo-mechanistic. In other words, it's in a feedback loop, and as the situation changes, enforcement methods will change as well.
Is it possible to get a preemptive rather than a feedback?
Well, I think it's possible to get somewhat preemptive, but because the people who make the drugs illicitly know how to tweak these drugs, and before this, as I mentioned earlier, would trigger a kind of lengthy review process. Now we've smoothed the way, so the cooperation is going to be easier, and it's going to be allowed in law enforcement, both in China and elsewhere, to move much more swiftly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harvey Zoding from Center of China and Globalization. Again, China has just announced the toughest measure in controlling fentanyl in the world, and the measures will officially take effect on May 1st, 2019. You're watching The World Today on CGTN. Stay with us.